Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. If you desire to intimately connect with yourself, significant other, children, family, friends, community, and higher power, then this is the show for you. We explore intimate topics, inspiring life stories, spirituality, and insightful tips on strengthening relationships. The show is hosted by Dr. April and her co-host, Coach K. Let's get this episode of the Bringing Intimacy Back show started. We share with you today the secret power to intimacy to create the life you love or love the life you create. Now here's your host, Dr. April, and her co-host, Coach K.
Welcome to the Bringing Intimacy Back show, where intimacy is real. Good afternoon, Coach K. How are things going?
Things are going just fine over here. How about yourself?
Things are wonderful. It's starting to get nice and cool here in Florida, which is exciting.
It was a crazy, weird, quick storm that came through, and all of the 60 that we used to have, 60 degrees are gone, and now we're cold too. So it's here.
Yes. It's nice. It's like in the 50s, so which is wonderful, you know. And I was on a walk the other day, and I actually ran into two little lovebirds. You know, Yes. It was Lovebird Lady and Lawrence, and I think a lot of people know I'm a sex therapist. So these two little lovebirds, they were just sitting there. And I kind of like overheard them like arguing a little bit. They were sitting on this branch. Mm-hmm. Yes. And Lady was saying, oh my gosh, I'm just tired of the same old thing. I want something different in our connection. I want to, she's like, oh my gosh, I fantasize about us being somewhere else besides this little lamp and just on, this neighborhood. I want to fantasize of us being somewhere else connected. I want us to be because we have beautiful beaches here. I want us to be by the water, be by this other stuff. And then, the lovebird Larry said, well, you know what I fantasize about? He was like, I wish there were more people that join us. And she was like, what? And they were like having this debate. And I was thinking, wow, it's a great topic to have. And I'm so happy that we are having this topic today. It's the surprising source of intimacy, of sexual fantasies.
That is. Hopefully those lovebirds worked it out, because, that fantasies is a great thing to walk into.
Yeah. But it was just amazing how, Lady Lovebird, her fantasy was somewhat different than his fantasy, and, sometimes that happens. So, so I'm so happy we have a wonderful guest coming to help explain all this and for us to have a good discussion about it. So when I'm back in the neighborhood and I see them again, I can give them some pointers. But before we get there, we do have a charity of the month that we've been talking about, and it's Better Together Us, which is a great charity because we're, of course, in the season of November, which is the season of Thanksgiving here in America. And so this one does a really good job of helping children out, foster care, and helping parents out.
Yeah, great charity, especially this time of the month. If you guys should definitely check them out. And if you have an abundance of, share with the charity.
Yeah. So if you're out there listening and you're wanting to know now about sexual fantasies, what are they talking about? The differences and stuff. Stay tuned. We're going to go for a commercial break, but we'll be right back in a moment.
Are you in a relationship with someone that you see often, but you feel so disconnected with them? Bringing Intimacy Back can help you bring the intimacy back to your relationship. BIB is dedicated to inspire, enlighten, and encourage intimate connections. Live shows, weekly guest speakers with over 29,000 downloads, we can help promote your products and services, grow your business and clientele with BIB. Want to become part of the BIB family? You can now sponsor with us.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy Show, where intimacy is real. And I'd like to welcome Artemisia. Did I say it right?
Artemisia de Vine.
Artemisia de Vine. Yes, she is an expert in sexual fantasies, and she's joining us from way over in another part of the world.
All the way down the bottom in Australia.
Yes, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, good. Well, one of the things that we like to start off with is, what does the word sexual fantasy mean, and how does that relate to intimacy?
I loved your lovebird story, because that is exactly that conversation has happened in so many bedrooms, hasn't it? It's like, my fantasy is this completely different thing to yours. Oh my goodness, does that mean we're incompatible? Does that mean that we're
that's what the birds were talking about? Yes.
Does that mean that we're going to be, I'm not good enough for you because you have fantasies that are different to mine? Like, this is such a big fear, isn't it? So let's just, as you said, break down what is a fantasy. So a fantasy is, when the way that I look at it, it is the mental part of what turns us on. So it is the meaning-making story running in the background of the moment, which may have, or might not either, but it may have visuals that go with it. So you might be imagining suddenly that there's an awful lot more people in the room than there literally is. You might be enjoying the idea of a threesome or group sex, or something that's happening that can be an entirely different story. It could be being rescued by the firemen. It could be suddenly becoming amazing at martial arts and rescuing some beautiful man damsel and having him absolutely want you. Like, it could be all sorts of different things, but it is also really subtle. So it's not always these out there fantasies with tentacles and all sorts of things. Sometimes it's really just the story we're drawing on mentally in order to get sexually turned on. So I might be thinking about, you're with your partner, but you're thinking about what they did last week that was exciting. And that is the thing that is exciting you, because right now they're touching you all lovingly, but last week when they were, on the stage speaking so competently, and all of these other people were drawn to them and attracted to them and their power and their charisma, that's the thing that was exciting to you. And you're now drawing that into the current moment to become excited. So it's the mental part of what turns us on. And it's always going to be different to your partners. This is the conundrum of sex.
Right.
The whole
And
thing.
I was just thinking, because one of the main sex organs is the brain.
Right.
Right. And how creative that can be.
Mm-hmm. And aren't we taught that the best intimacy comes from being fully present in the moment and connecting with our lover? So how do sexual fantasies play into this? This is what I play with. This is what I like to talk about. So sexual fantasies can be an extraordinarily surprising source of intimacy, because, let me back up a little bit. I am actually offering a brand new idea about why we have sexual fantasies and how we can engage them, which is being really well received by sexologists and sexperts all around the world, which is fantastic, because there was a missing piece in the current paradigms of what we thought sexual fantasies were. And this is a way to be able to explain them. So normally people would think about sexual fantasies in terms of, they'll look at them through the lens of, it must be something from my childhood. And unfinished business from my childhood that created this this particular way of me needing to think about this in order to get excited. And if I just solved that somehow, then it would be enough for me to just be fully present with my partner. So I should go and get some therapy. Or they go, oh, no, it's perfectly healthy to have fantasies. They're very normal, but we don't really know why we have them. We'll just kind of make sure that we act them out consensually, but we don't understand how to get the most out of them. Or we go into these sociological models where we're like, we must be turned on by this because of, this power structure or oppression in society. And that's why we've now resolved that in our fantasy in this way. Like, for instance, women are turned on by being submissive because of patriarchy, right? So as an example. And all of these things can be true. Like all of this stuff can be processed through our turn-ons. Of course they can. But I would like to say that even if you had the most perfect childhood in the most perfect society, you would still have really kinky sexual fantasies, or some percentage of the population would have kinky fantasies, and we would all have fantasies around power that would turn us on, all of us. Even when we think that power is not involved, we think we're having romantic, sweet loveliness, it's always involved. I'll show you how later.
Do you
But
think also it's because of growing up as how we play and how we play? When we're little, we come up with creative things as a child.
yeah,
And so as we get adults, that's what we do. We just come up with creative things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's play, isn't it? And that's what makes us understand the difference between puppies understand the difference between play fighting and a wolf going hunting. They know the difference. Animals know the difference. We know the difference between play fighting and actually being violent towards each other or actually dominating each other. Children know. But somehow we get afraid of it. We get afraid of it. Because there's a lot of people who don't understand how to be in relationship with their own sexual desires, and therefore they come out in wobbly ways that can harm themselves or somebody else. But once you understand how sexual fantasies work, you have a lot more power to interact with them in that beautiful, playful way that is really deeply beneficial and can create incredible intimacy. But my theory is, what is different about my theory is I'm looking at them through the lens of stories, not through therapy lens, looking at them through the lens of stories that change our state of consciousness from one state to another. And they're the exact story that our egos need to hear in order to let go, so we can lose ourselves in the moment, right? So it includes whatever it is that our ego is afraid of about being intimate and resolves it for us so that we can let go. So it includes the fear, the poison, and the exact antidote, and creates the exact opposite end result than our ego feared. It creates intimacy, pleasure, passion, safety, and even when you know how to do it, and sometimes you just stumble across it, spiritual states of oneness. You can lose your ego that far that you can just melt into life itself and have this incredibly profound experience of being beyond your own ego. You just connected to everything. This mystical experience that religions all around the world and science is currently also investigating keep talking about. Each religion puts a different meaning on it, and you get to put your own meaning on it, because I'm not going to tell you what that is. But this is a thing that is scientifically verifiable. We can enter this state, and it is therapeutically incredibly valuable for us to do that. We move beyond our own egoic fears of worrying about whether our self-worth, worrying about our social status, worrying about our identity. Just let it all go and be purely experiencing fully in the moment, fully with deep compassion for yourself, for the other person, for everything that exists. And so I stumbled across this in my former role as a sex worker and a professional dominatrix when I was creating tailored experiences for each of my clients. And when you get paid to become the sexual fantasy of thousands of people, you learn a thing or two about how the erotic psyche works. But I wasn't just studying it at a university, I was living it, getting to see the exact result that would happen to the person if I understood what the fantasy was really trying to say and brought to life a real experience based on the same psychological mechanisms within the fantasy. And then powerful things started to happen over and over and over again. So that's what I'm excited about. Pretty
Yes,
much.
it's an interesting theory, and you may want to explain, because some people may be saying ego. What exactly is, because you're saying it is what the ego needs to release, to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So explain what ego is, because I'm pretty sure I have audience members who are like, what is ego? Does that mean I'm arrogant, or, which is not. But you explain that part there so they can understand the full concept.
Sure can. And thank you for asking that, because that's a very important question. Okay. So yes, let's just imagine, this is just my story, because I always play with story models, right? So let's just imagine that your consciousness is made up of different organs, just like your body is made up of different organs. Like it has a heart, has lungs, a spleen, and each of these organs does a different job, and yet together they make up the body. So let's just imagine that your consciousness also has different organs of the psyche that are inside, and each of them has their own job, right? So, and they don't try and do each other's jobs. But an ego is one particular organ of the psyche, and its job is to give you a sense of self, so that I know that I'm an I, and I am separate to you. So it is about saying this organ of the psyche is very, very protective of you. So imagine that it is a castle wall around you that allows you to know that you're separate from everything outside of the wall. And it's going to have guards on the walls going, do not threaten the self in any way. And it's like it loves you. It really loves you. It really wants to. And doing its job to give you a sense of self is important, because if you don't know that you're a self separate from someone else, how are you even going to have a conversation? How are you going to buy a coffee? How are you going to do anything in this world? You
Yes.
need to understand that you are I, and you are you, right? But intimacy is not I. Intimacy is we. So how do we move from I to we? Right? How do we move outside those castle walls, especially when we've got guards standing there going, no way am I letting you be vulnerable in any way, shape, or form ever, because it's my job to protect your sense of self. And any form of vulnerability seems to be dangerous from the ego's perspective. So it says, no, you can't ask that person on a date. What if they reject you? You can't do that. You don't text back first, make them text you. Yes, right. So we have this natural, normal, healthy organ of the psyche whose job is to protect the sense of self, and it is afraid of all intimacy and vulnerability. We've got other organs of the psyche that have different functions and interact with it. And let's just imagine, because it's a story, not a scientific model, then another organ is called desire. Desire is this organ that creates wanting, like this magnetic pull towards something. And in fact, it has no fear. In fact, it doesn't actually even understand outside world consequences whatsoever. Each organ of the psyche has its genius and its blind spots. So the more you're aware of what each organ does, you can get the most out of them and avoid their traps. But desire is not known for its patience or its ability to worry about consequences. but it is this really strong force that draws you out of your castle wall so that you can connect. Desire is always this urge to merge, to lose yourself, ego, self, so that you can just lose yourself in the passion and the intimacy and the pleasure and the connection. So what sexual fantasies are, according to my theory, the divinery method, is that sexual fantasies are little stories whispered by desire into ego's ear, telling ego, hey, you're afraid that you're going to get rejected, or you're afraid that they don't really want to be here doing this with you, or you're not attractive enough. You can't take any risks like that. That's no good. I will include that symbolically in this little sexual fantasy story, and I'll resolve it for you. And it's like a little love letter from desire to ego saying, hey, ego, honey, come and play. The water's warm. I've got all this juice over here. Come on, I'm going to give you the exact formula that your ego needs to stand down. So it always includes, sexual fantasy always includes themes that help us resolve our fears around our self-identity, our social status, and our self-worth, and solve it for us. So that's pretty, but the thing is, and here's the paradox, your ego is going to be different to your lover's ego. So your lover is going to need a different story whispered to their ego in order to let go than you are. And it's because nobody's is the same. That's one thing that I learned as a sex worker, is that it's like as unique as a fingerprint. Everybody has a different version of the story that they need, and you need to listen carefully to be able to understand that and create a real life experience that's going to take them as far as they can go.
Right.
And
so
so
I'm curious how, as partners, if of course they feel safe, and I have one storyline, and my partner has another storyline, how do we connect those?
Well, the very first step, of course, is being able to feel safe enough to even admit that we have different desires, because we get so much of our source of safety from wanting the other person to be into what we're into. Like, if you're not into it, how can I share this with you? How can I be vulnerable if you, like, the whole thing, the whole guard not letting me outside of the castle wall is saying, do you really want to be here with me doing this? Am I turning you on? Am I good enough? And what do you mean I'm not the source of your turn on? You're thinking about a different thing. Oh my goodness, what am I going to do with that? That feels so threatening. I'm jealous of your fantasies. You should learn not to have them. You should just become satisfied by being fully present with me, and that should be enough for you. And if it's not, there's something wrong with you. This is the story we tell ourselves. Have you heard that one amongst your clients by any chance?
Yes, I have. Yeah. And I'm kind of in my mind thinking, because they do improv, a part of it is taking two stories and connecting and saying yes. Working. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you part A, part B, and creating something together. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And that is definitely one way you can do this. One thing that I did notice, though, is that if you are trying to fulfill two storylines at the same time, no one gets as far as they could possibly go. They only get halfway down the bridge, not out into the field, right?
Yeah, did not know that. Okay.
Yeah, because you need to follow your own narrative to get your ego to stand all the way down. If you only follow part of your narrative, you only get, maybe two of your three guards to stand down, right? or one. So that's one of the things that I noticed as a sex worker, is because I was being paid to fulfill their desires. I wasn't trying to fulfill mine. Suddenly, I was really listening and hearing what their narrative was and bringing that to life in embodied play, improv, if you like. But I was focusing on their narrative, and I was just having a whole lot of fun playing with it. So I was in the flow state of play with them, but it wasn't my narrative. And they would say that would blow their minds, because most people have never had somebody actually bring to life for them their entire narrative from beginning to end. And
Okay.
so they've never discovered just how far they could go into erotic states of consciousness before, right? They'd always stopped
Right.
short. So one of the things that we learn how to do in the divinery method is, how do you take turns to create experiences for each other on date nights so that you can get the fullness of it? And how do you go into the zone together, even though you're focusing on one person's or the other's? So that's definitely an important thing. But I love to watch how sexual fantasies resolve this paradox, because that gives us a clue that's always
Yes.
helpful, right? So sexual fantasies resolve three paradoxes. The whole point, as we've just discovered, is that we have to follow our own desires story, our own sexual fantasy, the narrative underneath the sexual fantasy, really, to be able to access the fullness of where we can go erotically. But we really fear our own desire. We're always trying to get our desire met, but we fear it. We don't trust it. We either try and suppress it so it goes away, or we give into it and then cop the consequence hangover later. Like, I mean, how can we trust desire when it's the force that tells you to eat all of the cakes in the bakery, all of them?
Right.
Or never pay your tax because it's better to buy pretty hats. Like, what? How can you trust this force to keep you safe and somebody else safe when it doesn't seem to understand consequences? So sexual fantasy, one of the questions I always ask myself when I'm working out somebody's particular unique erotic wiring is, in what way does this person fear that following their desire would harm themselves, their own ego, their lover, or the fabric of society? And when you find that out and you look at their fantasy, you see, oh, that's actually the story of their fantasy. Oh, they've included that fear and they've resolved it. So, for example, like your example was the second paradox with, how do I follow my desire when my lover's got a different desire, and we're trying to feel this together, we're trying to be in the zone together. That's the whole point. And yet we have to focus on ourselves as separate beings, and we're not going to get to go where we need to go. A sexual fantasy might come in at that point and say, well, okay, you're a really kind person who wants to make sure that your lover is taken care of. You want to, you care about them. You want them to be happy. You want them to have fun. But you need to focus on yourself. So let's have a sexual fantasy about being tied up and being used, right? If you're tied up and you're being used by the other person, of course, in the sexual fantasy, you're being used, but actually they're touching you exactly the way that you really want to be touched. Magically mind reading, right? So it's not actual using. That's the antidote right there, the take notice, poison and antidote. But if you're being used, that means that the other person is being selfish, which means the other person is getting their needs met, because otherwise they wouldn't use you. So that means, well, yes, I am worthy of their desire, because otherwise they wouldn't use me. And I don't have to caretake their needs anymore. They're already taken care of. I've now got permission to focus on my own needs. I can now just surrender into just pure experiencing and receiving the sensations. But people make a big mistake when they try and bring that to life. They go, "Ooh, well, honey, I've got this sexual fantasy about being used and tied up. Can you tie me up and use me?" And they take that literally, and they just do that. And they don't include the antidote, which is actually, I need this body language, this attitude, this safety risk ratio, this and touch me this way and this way. And so it's not being used at all. It's actually the exact opposite of being used. It's actually someone lovingly creating a beautiful experience for you. But this is just one way that sexual fantasies would resolve that particular problem. Does that make sense to you?
No, that makes sense. And I'm hearing a lot of things. Number one, you've got to have great communication.
You do.
You know what I'm
You
saying?
just
To
gotta.
express and also to be able to hear from your partner what they want. That was one thing I heard. The second thing I heard was that, like you said, if it's I have a fantasy, they have a fantasy, if we come together, we only get half. So then I was thinking, then you really have to be able to communicate. Well, let's do my fantasy this way or this time period. You know, the next time period we do your fantasy. So again, back to that communication.
You really can't have good sex without communication. Anyone who tries is just never going to reach the full potential. They might stumble across some amazing sex here and there, but they won't know how to get back there again.
Right.
And you just have to communicate. It has to be that way. But one of the really interesting things that I discovered as a sex worker was I was being paid to follow their narrative. So I wasn't, as you can imagine, as a sex worker for a few thousand people, you're kind of like, I'm not turned on by this, dude. This is not my turn on. I'm doing this for you. But what was fascinating to me was when I started to really get into this as a game, as play, and get my own nervous system into a flow state of play. And I would find myself deeply satisfied. I would go down the rabbit hole with them, and our states of consciousness changed together. We both ended up going there, which was fascinating, right? It was absolutely unexpected, because if you're just sitting there, if you're just acting and you're doing it out of obligation, you're not going to go down the rabbit hole with them.
No, not at all.
But I made it into this wonderful, delicious game of, well, for me, I had to play. There's two ways to make your ego stand down, right? One is to make your ego so huge that it's as big as the sun, and then it feels completely safe, like Superman. Nothing can possibly get it, and so then it relaxes. And the other way is to make it really small and tiny, so that you're insignificant and nothing, and then it disappears, and you become nothing, and then dissolve into everything and become everything. So there's these two ways, these two strategies. I used to use when I was working professionally, I would use the make my ego big one to get my own ego to stand down. I'll be like, yeah, I am that good. I am the panther. I am going to chase down I'm going to work you out, and I'm going to get the response from you that I want. And then I turned that, and they loved that, by the way. That was consensual. That's the kind of client that I was attracting. So you have to match it to who you're playing with. But you wouldn't think that would lead to intimacy, but it really did. Like then I would get this power rush, and then I would feel so amazing because I was getting the response from them that I wanted. Then their ego would let go, my ego would let go, and we'd have these extraordinary moments. Complete strangers who'd only met an hour or two ago were just suddenly looking into each other's eyes, and our ego is gone. So out of the back, it's not even in the backseat of the car, it's out of the car. And we are looking at each other and seeing what feels like looking at each other's soul. It feels like, oh my God, that's who you are beyond your ego defenses. That's who you are. And they would say that. Some person who just walked through the door earlier thinking, I just want to see somebody who's got blonde hair and big breasts, and not even thinking about this, thinking, about their dirty fantasy. And by the end of the 2 hours, they're all, what even was that? Right. What is that? I didn't even know I could feel this way. It feels like the most real I've ever been. This is who I always really was, but couldn't quite grasp. This is the most real of everything. That's you look up oneness states, start investigating the benefits of being able to explore. That's why people go to do meditation. That's why there's this huge increase in therapists studying the benefits of psychedelic assisted therapy, because all of these things, dancing, all of these things can take us beyond our ego into a moment of just connection. You felt it on the dance floor when you dance with everybody else. You felt it when everybody just sinks, right? That moment you're not thinking, you're just feeling.
I was just thinking, so when we talk about those relationships that are committed and happily married or happily committed, and when you have that same sense of safety net, that sense of, I feel safe, I can be whatever, then kind of like you're saying, using your theory, that can also bring such a feeling of excitement, of release. You know what I'm saying? When you put in those emotions of feelings. Does that make sense in some aspect?
Yeah, you re-see each other new again when you get to have ego dissolution experiences together regularly. You're all new eyes. Oh my goodness, it's awe and wonder. That's what it feels like. It feels like awe and wonder.
Yes.
And the only way to do this is to accept each other the way we are. So
Exactly.
the smutty, dirty thoughts, instead of running away with fear around them, because they don't seem to match how we want to behave in our everyday life at all. They seem quite contrary to that. Instead of running away from fear, let's take a closer look at the narrative. What is this story doing? What is it overcoming? And stop taking it personally. When your partner has a different fantasy to you, your partner, like the little lovebird, wanted a threesome or a group sex. And the other one was like, I want sensuality and connection with nature. And but each one of them is actually the most intimate thing that you could possibly do, is to actually see the other person as they are and rise to meet it and feel joy in playing that with them. And I want to be clear, that does not mean you have to have threesomes or group sex. You just have to understand what purpose of that narrative, and how can you activate the same thing together in your intimacy? How can you not take it personally so that you can see them and accept them? And there is nothing more intimate than actually having somebody see the dark, secret corners of your mind and not pull away, but lean in with curiosity and joy to play with you. There is nothing more intimate than having them see the parts that you're afraid to tell anyone and have them love you anyway.
Wow. That has been so powerful. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. And I love that your concept. And so if people are out there listening and they want to know more information about you or how to connect with you.
Sure. Well, I've got a little freebie you can go and learn, because people want to go, how am I going to work out my wiring? But I'm too scared to tell anyone my fantasy yet. So I need to be able to do so. How can I do something? So I made a little mini course for you called the Celeb Swoon Technique, and it's free, where you can I'll walk you through some steps where you can just do Google image search of somebody, a celebrity that you find swoon worthy or at least attractive, and see them in several different images. Because the first thing that people say is, when you say, what do you find attractive, is they start focusing on the physical attributes. Okay, so let's bring those physical attributes into the room. Let's have them there. But you will notice that when you've got 5 or 6 pictures of exactly the same person, you will find some pictures of them more attractive than others. Body language and the attitude is going to be starting to reveal what the narrative is that actually makes that hot for you. So I'll walk you through step by step how to be able to start understanding your own narrative from doing that exercise from there. And if you're interested in continuing to learn, I'm running monthly masterclasses. But really, you can learn the whole method halfway through 2025 when my book comes out, The Spirituality of Smut. the surprising wisdom of sexual fantasies is going to come out in a few months.
Awesome. Definitely. We definitely have to have you back on. And so that free program that you were saying that's on your website, what's the name of it again? I didn't get the name.
Celeb Swoon Technique, which you can find at myfantasyis.com.
Okay.
And my main website is just my name with a .com on the end, Artemisia de Vine. Yeah.
Awesome. And you also hold mastermind classes.
Yes, master classes once a month in different aspects of the divinery method, so you can learn. I get a lot of advanced people, but everybody is welcome. I get lots of therapists, lots of sexologists, lots of all the sexperts want to learn what I'm doing, but also anyone who's interested in getting more intimacy and understanding themselves is absolutely welcome to come along and join in.
All right, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. Thank you so much, and you're always welcome back.
I'd love to come back. Thank you so much.
Thank you for sure.
Thank you. All right, we'll take a break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Cape Coral Therapist wants you. We are looking for a registered intern in mental health or family and marriage. Are you looking to start your own practice? Are you able to work in the Cape Coral office? Are you willing to work with men, teens, addiction, and relationships? And if you're bilingual, it's a plus. If the answer to all these questions are yes, then send your resume to info@draprilbrown.com or call 239-565-6921 for more information.
Welcome back to the Bringing Intimacy show, where intimacy is real. Wow, that was so intriguing, educational.
Oh yeah,
yes,
it was very helpful, and I'm sure that Larry should have picked up some pointers that he could share with his lovebird partner for sure, because it makes you think deeper than just that surface.
Right, definitely. And I was thinking about them, and I was thinking, Ladybird Lady, how sometimes, and I've known other people, I've known people, I know these are birds, that sometimes get so jealous by a person's fantasy, their partner's fantasy. And so I am going to tell her to calm herself down, to go in more. Yes, to go in more and to ask questions and to be curious and how to, to play it out. So and I can't wait to have her back to hear about her new book that's coming out in 2025.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes. So what's coming up?
So we have some great shows that are coming up. Of course, next week we will not be on for the holidays. So happy holidays to all of you. But on November the 28th, we'll take a look back at Learning to Love. On December the 5th, we're going to take that look back at No More Time for Intimacy. It's a question. On December the 12th, we are going to have Motherhood and the Pen, Finding Yourself Through Writing with book coach Josie Smith. And then on December the 19th, How to Reconnect with Patients on a Deeper Level with Jen Johnson. So great shows coming up.
Yes, definitely. And please look forward to our shows. If you miss our topic today, please go ahead and check her out. Her website is www.myfantasyis.com. And please check her out. And we will see you guys in a couple of weeks. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone, and take care. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Bringing Intimacy Back, where intimacy is real. You can also find us at bringingintimacyback.com, LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. Dr. April Brown's 7th book series, Improving Intimacy, is now on Amazon. We'll see you next Thursday at 3:30 p.m. Don't forget to follow, share, and subscribe.